So we're going to be looking at the poem Born Yesterday by Philip Larkin. He was born in Coventry in 1922. He was a librarian at the University of Hull for more than 30 years. He was offered the position of Poet Laureate on the death of John Betjeman in 1984, but he declined, not least because he felt he had long since ceased to be a writer of poetry in a meaningful sense. That's quite a big statement to make, I think, to decline Poet Laureate. Born Yesterday was written for Kingsley Amis's daughter Sally, who was born in 1954. It was published in Larkin's 1955 collection. There's a clear link between the theme and the title of the poem and the title of the collection, which is The Less Deceived. As here, form often reflects and enhances content in Larkin's poetry, so form is quite important.
Okay, so I'm going to read it through first, so we've got a full reading of the poem. Born Yesterday for Sally Amis. Tightly folded bud, I have wished you something none of the others would. Not the usual stuff about being beautiful or running off a spring of innocence and love. They will all wish you that, and should it prove possible, well, you're a lucky girl. But if it shouldn't, then may you be ordinary. Have, like other women, an average of talent. Not ugly, not good looking, nothing uncustomary to pull you off your balance. That unworkable itself stops all the rest from working. In fact, may you be dull, if that's what a skilled, vigilant, flexible, unemphasised, enthralled catching of happiness is called. Okay, so if we start with the title, Born Yesterday, it almost acts as a dedication to the new child. Born Yesterday has an idea of innocence, but also possibly the experience that's come before that. So that idea of experience also.
Naivety as well. I wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
The dedication itself is quite unusual. There aren't many other poems, if any, I don't think, in the cluster that are dedicated in that way. So it feels like a very personal poem, almost like a tribute. But the ideas are universal, and that's the idea of constructing an argument within it, taking it from the personal to the sort of wider. Okay, so we've got tightly folded bud. Well, my first thought is kind of flowers and nature. And the idea of a bud sort of opening up, springtime birth, which obviously links to the idea of somebody being born. Tightly folded perhaps implies a protection that you'd obviously have when you're first born. I have wished you something. Wished past tense. I feel there's thought there.
I have wished as well. It's continuous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it was something that was clearly he was often thinking about.
Yeah. So I've wished you something, but then there's a vagueness to that. The use of the pronoun, there's something quite vague there. Well, what is it? And that's part of the sort of structure here, giving us that clue but not quite telling us just yet. And it's something none of the others would, so there's an implication about it being unique here, something different, something special. Most people want health, happiness, you know, those sorts of things, so it's interesting to think about what he might be offering. Not the usual stuff. I find usual stuff quite colloquial, as in not the usual stuff everyone else wants, not the everyday here, almost like he's going beyond that. So not the usual stuff about being beautiful, classic, we know it's for Sally, we know she's female, classic, let's hope she's beautiful, but saying not the usual, it's not about being beautiful. So there's an idea of challenge here, possibly of arguments developing.
The immediate wish that we're given a clue about as well is that kind of superficial.
Yeah.
So we're going to get the impression that what he wants is not superficial.
So not the usual stuff about being beautiful or running off a spring of innocence and love. So I think there's some imagery about having maybe an easier life and everything's maybe towards perfection. I think there, the hints at perfection. Innocence and love. Simple things, everyday things, maybe.
Yeah, romanticised, I think.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of a spring of innocence and love, it's quite, the image is
Cliched.
a bit, yeah, very cliched, yeah.
They will all wish you that. Now I like this because it's they, it's that third person, it's that other. They will wish you that. So there's detachment there.
Yeah.
this person is different, their views are different, this argument is different. And should it prove possible, well, you're a lucky girl. So quite dismissive there. And should it, no sort of agreement, but should it, sort of speculation. You're a lucky girl. Different interpretations of lucky girl. Is that slightly patronising?
I think a little bit. It's got an element of flippancy to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Like he's saying how it's kind of this wish that others would have is kind of ridiculous, and you shouldn't take that seriously.
Yeah. And then you'd be considered lucky. But maybe the idea of what people consider to be lucky is there's no acknowledgement of the work or the life or the effort that's gone into that. But if it shouldn't, so we're getting the shift now, the shift in argument in the second verse. But if it shouldn't, then may you be ordinary. Interesting choice of words. So we're shifting the argument forward. May you be ordinary. May, modal verb, but giving permission. Almost like she's entitled to be.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a criticism here that when babies are born, there's always an assumption that they're going to be this, and this, and that actually the majority of babies will be ordinary.
Yeah.
So may you be ordinary. And then we've got this kind of listing approach here. So we've not got, all this is the one sentence here. So we've got a long kind of listing of perhaps qualities and traits that are desirable. So may you be ordinary. Have like other women. So the idea that you won't be different. And an acknowledgement of what the reality is like. So may you have like other women an average of talents. An average of talents perhaps meaning range, but not necessarily expecting anything exceptional at this point. Not ugly, not good looking. So again, not striving for the superficial.
Yeah.
Nothing uncustomary to pull you off your balance. Problems?
We've got some really ordinary language, haven't we? Ugly, good looking, average.
Yeah.
There's not a sophistication in language, but it's clearly a purposeful choice there.
Yeah.
Because I suppose the ordinariness of the language reflects the ordinariness of what he wants for his daughter.
It to be like. That unworkable itself stops all the rest from working. Things holding you back. I think there's an idea about being held back there. He doesn't want that. If something's unworkable and it's stopping it, there's like negativity there. So there's some negative lexis. In fact, there's this argument here. There's this authority in that tone. In fact, almost we're sort of summarising. We're getting to the point now.
Yeah.
In fact, may be dull. If that's what, if, conditional. Possibilities here. If that's what a skilled, vigilant, flexible, unemphasised, enthralled catching of happiness is called. So the listing of these qualities for a newborn baby, well, what could we say? Skilled, vigilant, flexible. They're quite admirable, but every day. Yeah. They're almost... what's the word? Like sort of characteristics, but
they're not overly positive, are they?
No, they're
not,
just
or whimsical. They're practical and straightforward. And I think it's quite interesting that word dull is clearly the important word, because these are all the things that can make her dull. And that's a contrast in what we would assume. We would think dull means not vigilant, not flexible. But he's saying actually that's what dull is. It's what others might seem to be unexciting is actually openness.
And is actually the key to this, the catching of happiness. And I like that as a sort of metaphor. The idea that happiness is fleeting and it is about the catching of it. Yeah. And perhaps this is an honest reflection of what makes people happy. And maybe it's these qualities that do make people happy. Not the idea that we had here about being beautiful and having this idyllic lifestyle. This is the premise for a happy life. And I think there's some acknowledgement in there about growing up and characteristics and developing that links quite well with Nettles. Actually, I think the links of acknowledging what childhood is like
Yeah.
and what people's expectations are, and the managing of expectations, I think we're seeing there.
I think that those expectations link in as well with the structure of the poem, the fact that it comes back to this unexpected idea that the poet would like the daughter to be ordinary, and that's an unexpected idea, and it reflects the kind of unexpected nature of life as well, the way that we can't actually predict how life is going to turn out. It will always turn out differently to how we expect, so we're best to have these alter our expectations slightly.
Yeah. Is there anything we want to say about structure and form? We've got the idea of not the reveal initially, the argument in verse 2.
Yeah. The list as well in verse 2.
I don't know if I have. Yeah, I'll write list in there.
And the ending on the wish that she is dull, which is that kind of anticlimactic, but then the not anticlimactic. It's climactic in the way that it is anticlimactic, isn't it?
But yeah. In fact, may you be dull.
Yeah.
If that's what a skilled, vigilant, flexible, and emphasised. I think unemphasised is really interesting sort of choice there.
Yeah.
Unemphasised, because
it's like you're not trying to capture this happiness. It just happens.
But I like enthralled as well, because enthralled suggests you've got a passion. So there are sort of subtle wants within those word choices, I think. And obviously skilled suggests maybe talent, hard work, those sorts of things.
It's kind of like you work, you're passionate, but without expectation. So you work for what you get.
Yeah, like a quiet dedication.
Rather than just being given this beauty and given the innocence and given the love, you work for for the averageness of the happiness of life.
And I wonder if that's about the idea that he's building the argument of what he thinks life should be about. And that's a thought provoked with the child being born yesterday. But yet these ideas weren't necessarily captured yesterday. They're ideas that have been captured over a period of time, perhaps. Have we got anything else we want to...
There's a possible question about gender. So would it be different for a son?
Yeah, ideas of beauty.
And if you're thinking about gender in any of the other poems, maybe things like Farmer's Bride, the ideas about expectations for boys and girls, and how that would... Maybe it would be interesting to explore how this poem would be different if it was written for a boy. Because what are the expectations for a son? Well, surely they're vigilance and flexibility and skill,
same,
as opposed to beauty and innocence and love anyway.
Yeah. Okay.